Hello and welcome to PhDear Diary. My name is Andy Salkeld and this is my video blog, diary, whatever you want to call it, whilst I am undertaking a PhD at Leeds Beckett University in psychology. We are on episode 17, so this is week 17 of the PhD. We passed the confirmation of registration 2 weeks ago, and we are now firmly in the preparing to do studies. But this week is very much not too focused on the PhD and what's been happening, because largely not a lot has been happening. It's more focused on last weekend and what's going on this weekend, as this is kind of the first break I'm having in a while. But on the PhD, we've had some good progress. I am moving forward with writing up my proposed questionnaire and the studies. I've had to change some of my measures round to get it to a kind of reasonable length. It's coming in about 122 questions so far, which when you look at average question length of 5 to 10 seconds, that means it's going to come out at roughly 10 to 20 minutes, which from looking around various sources, various papers on this, that's typically good for maintaining attention span, particularly if you're asking questions the reader has not considered before, and so on, which I most certainly am in organisational financing. So that's positive. And then when I kind of work that through into sample size calculations and costings, it kind of broadly comes in at where I want the first study to do. I've had to change some of the measures, so I'm no longer using Maslach's burnout inventory. That's a 22 question measure. Instead, what I'm using is just the work component of the Copenhagen burnout inventory. And this is one of the things I experience in business, but I hadn't appreciated that it's relevant in a kind of a research setting as well, where you have to make compromises for kind of affordability and budgeting purposes. And that's fine. Like, it happens. I'm comfortable with where it is, and it's just applying different logic and different reasoning and so on. The one thing that I've been struggling with this week is demographic questions. And the reason researchers record demographic questions is kind of twofold. One, it's to kind of describe the population who's taking part, to show that it's either representative of the wider population, kind of the target population, as you will, or so that's kind of reason one, so that you can kind of indicate ecological validity. So if you end up with a composition of, say, 90% males and 10% females, that doesn't work in the kind of that isn't necessarily ecologically valid when the population as a whole is more evenly spread than that. And similarly with age or things like that, you want to make sure that it kind of matches up as best you can. And that's why you go for higher sample sizes and things like that, so you can kind of get closer to averages. And the second reason that we record the sample or record the demographics is to see if the demographics are influencing it. Are older people responding differently to younger people? Are people with higher education qualifications responding differently to people without? And so on and so forth. Because if there is an effect from those, then it's important to make note that that is showing an effect, because otherwise your data or your results may not actually be correct given what you've done. So, but the bit that's tricky is, how do you ask those questions properly and so on. So I've been going through and just reading around how to ask these questions. And you'd think it was quite easy. You'd think it's kind of like, okay, well, how do I ask someone sex? Well, actually, there's many different kind of sexes. It's different from sexual identity, which is different from gender identity. And asking that question can be very complicated. And asking it to be inclusive can be even more complicated, and so on. Similarly, with things like employment status, saying unemployed has more of a negative connotation than saying not currently employed, and things like that. And you can bias the responses to your survey based on the questions you ask, and also, importantly, where you ask them in a survey. So if you ask them at the beginning, people may think that they're important and relevant to the results. If you ask them at the end, people don't really care about them, but you may not gather that data if people kind of give up, fall out, move on, etc., and just stop doing the survey. So it's a very interesting part of survey design that I'd kind of broadly touched on, but it is very important. And that's kind of where I'd be. I'm roughly 20 questions into writing out of 122. I'm using the Qualtrics platform, which is actually fantastic. It's really good. But it's about how you phrase things, how you structure it and everything like that. So it's just going to take time. Now is very much a doing. And this week I haven't had much time because of the other things I've been doing and working around. And the other great bit of news this week was I spoke to a very old friend of mine that I worked with at PwC, and we've been friends with ever since. We have the same childish humour. We have the same kind of approach to life, very, very relaxed, but also kind of high-paced. And we both have learnt to appreciate kind of mental wellness and everything like that over various things happening in our lives. So we met up. I talked him through what I'm doing. He's now a finance director at an organisation, and he was very supportive. Says he'd love to be involved. He'd love his team to be involved. He'd love the organisation to be involved, and that's huge. That's such a big that could be a PhD in itself. Let's put it that way, where you do one mega detailed, mega thought out case study. You wouldn't necessarily get the same ecological validity, but you would gain so much depth of one experience that you could start drawing conclusions about the connections in that setting alone. Now, obviously, when you start going into other settings, you start having to ask questions, you start having to think about, oh, well, is it valid? Is it, like, can you generalize from one population to another? And the answer in most cases is no. But you can start with more information than if you just do what I'm doing, which is going blind into a sample. And it will give me a very, very nice, assuming everything goes ahead, you've always got to be kind of a bit cautious with these things. Assuming it goes ahead, everything, like, it gives me a lot of information it will take a large amount of time, but it's incredibly powerful to have that depth and so on. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be kind of an evolving work relationship over the next few months as I get everything ready, as he's involved as an expert in kind of assessing my measures and making sure that they work. And yeah, generally it's very positive, and I'm in all seriousness, I was just really glad to see a friend that I haven't seen for ages. It's been too long, and that in itself was worthwhile. But that's where I am next week. Next week is a short week. I will still be recording one of these, but I may be recording it on a different day. But I will still try to put it out at the same time on Friday mornings. You'll note I'm recording this incredibly early, and that's because I'm going away today. I am going to to Nottingham to the Goonhammer Warhammer 40,000 Open. And this has been something that I've been talking about briefly on here, but it's kind of the culmination of about 5 months of practice and preparation. And I'm excited, nervous, uncertain, all those words about it. But it's happening and I'm ready, and so on. So dial it back. Last week I went, I believe I mentioned it on here, I went to a Dyson Bolter RTT, which is a Rogue Trader tournament, which is basically 3 rounds. On the Saturday, very first Warhammer event, went by myself, exceptionally nervous, exceptionally kind of, oh my god, should I just cancel this at the last minute? But I went ahead with it. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to play. It doesn't matter if I lose. It doesn't matter if I win. I'm just going to play because I want practice playing against people that are not my best friends. And I came second. And I came second only by 9 points. So each round you can score up to a maximum of 100. And I basically was 9 points out of 300 behind the winner. And that just came down to my second game, which was an absolute haymaker fest where we desperately tried to punish each other. And it was great. I did not expect to do that well. I don't expect to do well this weekend because it's got a bigger catchment area and therefore more people with more kind of want to win are going to be there. So it's going to be a much, much more aggressive competition. But at the same point, it gave me confidence going into it. Now, on my website, you might see in the blog section that I wrote up a RTT tournament report. So I won't go into details on it because it's all written up there. But I had a really good time. I enjoyed it. I spent my time with people I'd never met, but I just let the extrovert in me out and kind of thrived and played for fun and just got talking, and it was great. And I intend to do the same this weekend, except this weekend I'm going to be doing it over 2 days, but I'm going to have friends with me, so it's going to be kind of able to come out of my shell more than I have done in a long time. And ahead of this weekend, I think it was on Tuesday, I wrote a Goonhammer tournament prep article. And what I did in this, to kind of culminate all the work I've done, is I've basically said, here's the 6 missions we're playing on the terrain that is going to be present. Everything is going like, and this is my general plan going into it. This is what I think I'm going to do. This is how I think I'm going to do it. And this is my general approach. So I talked about what the strengths of Adeptus Sororitas are on each mission, how I play as it's kind of like a chess trading army and so on. I played it. I talk about what secondaries I plan to take, how I plan to attack my opponent's primary, etc., etc., like where I'll position on the maps. And the reason I did it is, 1, people were interested, but 2, it allows me to look back after the event and say, hey, you know what? This is what I said was going to happen, and this is what did happen, and I get to learn from it. Whereas with the RTT, I had nothing written down. Now I have something written down, and as I take notes throughout the day, as I kind of take photos and say, oh, this is how this happened, this is how... all that, suddenly it's like, right, okay, now let's talk. Now I can look back and say, well, I didn't do this. I didn't follow my own plan and it cost me. Or I didn't follow this and it cost me, etc. So I'm kind of like I believe in learning. I always want to be learning, and this is a way for me to learn, even though even though I've done it so much. It allows me to see what's it allows me to look back and compare the results to the preparation and see how they differ, because in the moment I may be stressed, I may be impacted by this, I may forget all these sorts of things, and it's suddenly it's a big deal. And I want to be able to look back and say, well, actually, I'd thought about this, but I deviated from the plan because of X, because of Y, because that way I can actually grow and say, well, did I need to deviate from the plan? Did I need to adjust accordingly for X, Y, and Z? And it allows me to kind of grow as a player, but also grow as an individual, because these are things we need to do in life in all regards. So yeah, that is where I am. I'm going down to Nottingham today with a friend, and we're going to go to Warhammer World, then we're going to chill out and get some food, and then just get an early night and get ready for the event. I did not sleep well last night. I don't know what it was, but I just didn't sleep well, so I was up at 5:30, cracking on with the day, just kind of what it is. But yeah, all in all, this is going to be a fun weekend. I'm excited for it. It'll be a nice break and a nice chance to spend a lot of time with my friends. And other than that, work is going well. I have a board meeting next Friday for Discover, which I'm excited about. It looks like they've been doing great on social media. So I'm excited to hear what's happening with them, what the plans are for the next couple of months, etc. Where the next kind of targets and opportunities are. So really looking forward to that. I've got, as I said, I'm progressing everything with a PhD, and yeah, everything seems to be going well, and I'm excited to keep going. Just lots going on and lots to do. So thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. If you want to see me this weekend, I might end up on the Hellstorm Wargaming Twitch and YouTube. I am the only Adeptus Sororitas player at Goonhammer, so if you watch this and want to try and get me on stream, then you can easily do that by asking to just see that faction, because I'm the only one there. I don't think it'll happen, but you never know. But yeah, that's where I'll be. You can find me. I'll be posting a tournament report afterwards. But yeah, everything is good. I'm excited about it, and wish me luck. So thank you for tuning in, and I will speak to you in a week's time. Thank you very much, everyone.